Right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Kent City Council meeting for Tuesday, January 5th, 2021. Pretty sure a lot of us thought we weren't going to make it to 2021, but here we are. First meeting of the year. I'd like to welcome everyone. Want to remind folks that due to COVID-19 and health and safety requirements, and by the order of the governor, this is a remote meeting. A live broadcast of this meeting is available on Kent TV 21 on the City of Kent Facebook page, as well as our YouTube channel, which is Kent TV 21. There's also a dial-in option for those wishing to listen to the meeting over the phone. With that, we are called to order, and I will turn it over to Kim to call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mayor Ralph?
Here.
Council President Troutner?
Here.
Councilmember Boyce?
Here.
Councilmember Fincher?
Here.
Councilmember Kaur?
Here.
Councilmember Larmer?
Here.
Councilmember Michaud?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kim. We're moving on to item 3. It's the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda from council or staff?
None from staff this evening, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So with that, a motion would be in order to approve the agenda as published.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Item number 4 on our agenda is public communications. We're going to start right out with public recognition. And as we do at the beginning of each month, we are going to celebrate our Employee of the Month. For January 2021, it is Officer Lyndon Barron. Officer Barron was hired on March 13th of 2012 as a police patrol officer. As a police officer, Lyndon is responsible for helping to protect life and property, enforce laws and ordinances, prevent and investigate crimes. He also patrols and directs traffic within many areas of the community and consistently works to ensure the safety of our residents while working to improve the quality of life in the community he serves. Officer Barron was nominated because he's always going the extra mile and helping out his coworkers. He is selfless, dedicated, and caring toward the residents of Kent and truly has a servant's heart. It was noted that on many calls, the police facade slips away and a fatherly figure comes out. He truly cares about the Kent residents, and it shows in how he treats people. It was also noted that you can always count on him to have your back. Officer Barron will go the extra mile to help out any and everyone. He continuously embraces our values, and we celebrate him as January's Employee of the Month. So let's give a round of congratulations to Lyndon Barron, much deserved Employee of the Month. I've explained this before, but just so you all know, every month employees have the opportunity to nominate one of their coworkers to be the Employee of the Month, and it's always fun to read the nominations because it shows that for the most part, it's just people being themselves, working during just doing their jobs and the dedication and service that they provide. It's not always the one outstanding project, but really just how they approach their job in their everyday lives and embody the values and mission of the City of Kent. So want to congratulate Officer Barron. All right, we are going to move on to community events. I will turn it over to Council President Troutner. My guess is we don't have a lot going on because it's still COVID.
And you are correct. Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have nothing to share this evening.
All right. Any community events from any other council members? All right. Seeing none, we will go ahead and move on. Tonight, Bill Ellis is joining us to provide us with our Economic and Community Development Report. Bill, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, and Happy New Year, everyone. Nice to see everyone tonight. So good evening, Council. It is indeed 2021. Didn't think we'd all make it, right? So here we are, and I'm here to give an update. I thought I'd take some of my remarks tonight to not only discuss things that my department has done, but things that we are planning to do next, and put it into context of a regional dialogue that's been taking place about the economy. Next slide, please, Mayor. Kim. First slide, revisit economic recovery. So I don't know if everyone can recall a lifetime ago, back in April in 2020, I was looking at my notes for the first presentation I gave during COVID, and we were all talking about what letter, VULW, Nike swoosh, what was going to be the shape of the recovery as COVID would eventually recede. A lot of the discussion now has been about the letter K and how things are splitting. The outcomes for people are going in two different directions. This is a mashup of, I think, what people had talked about. But I think a lot of what we're seeing right now in the economy is an acceleration of all pre-existing trends, which is one thing that I think a lot of people thought might happen. So what do I mean by all that? Next slide, please. This is from a study that Harvard's been doing on private payroll data. It's a little bit backward looking, but if you go to tracktherecovery.com, you can look at every metropolitan area, every state, every county in the country. And what's interesting about this, and one of the reasons why I bring it up tonight, is the widening gap between outcomes for employment, depending on what your wage level are. You might notice that back early in the year, way back in January 20th, when the first COVID case was recorded in the US, actually middle wage jobs were more abundant than high wage jobs in the state of Washington. Next slide, please. I'm just going to zoom in a little closer. King County, also the case, where things started to take a nosedive, of course, when the restrictions were put in place. We noticed that middle wage work dived well below high wage work, and low wage work much further in King County as compared to the state as a whole. Snohomish County, oddly and for reasons I cannot explain, has actually seen an increase in the amount of low wage work and a decrease in the amount of high wage work, which is not typical of what we're seeing more nationally. I don't have an answer for that, but notable. Next slide, please. So Kent is measured within this labor market of the Seattle metropolitan area, and this is the Seattle area performance. And want to point out that Seattle is middle wage jobs are running 2 points lower than the national average, and high wage work is actually, you can see, up 1.7% since the pandemic started. So people who can work remotely, those types of jobs have returned and have actually increased a little. The number of low wage work positions have declined a great deal, of course, and middle wage is below. So Seattle is, by some measures, underperforming other metropolitan areas. Next slide, please. So why is this, and how much of this is novel to COVID-19, and how much of this is a problem of our economy? I'm lifting tonight from a couple of different sources. This is from the city of Seattle and a big piece they put out recently. Their ideal economy there is most of the jobs are found in the middle wages, lesser at the high or low ends, less extreme. What we have, of course, is more of this two-hump camel situation where we have a lot of low-wage work and a lot of high-wage work, and we don't have as much jobs in the middle. And they say this is partly a consequence of a longer-run trend that's going back more to the generation now, where there are people who have skills and access to broadband and ability to work remotely in the types of professions they have, and people who do not. And that was already responsible in many's mind, this skills mismatch to job openings for a bulk of the inequality that we saw. COVID-19 and the restrictions, and as this meeting today points out, has only made that more difficult. So what the Office of Economic Development and our colleagues and counterparts in the city of Seattle are pointing out is that we need to improve and stabilize low-wage jobs, intervene there. We need to intervene in the sort of middle-wage jobs in the middle. We also need to intervene to make higher wage work pull for more demographic backgrounds, to be more diversified. Next slide, please. What is that? Boiling that down, all that complexity, where are we right now? Just too many people are out of work. People are stuck in low-wage jobs. People are shot out of the high-quality jobs that there exist. And I think this last one, I think, is really important for our focus as a division going forward in the Economic Development Department, is that people can't start and grow, and that's the key word there, grow business. And of course, and this is very key to all regional economic recovery planning right now, is how do we address sort of the systemic disparities that exist that exacerbate all of these issues. Next slide. Two things that have been discussed, and I credit Brookings Consultant, who's been consulting to the City of Seattle and Greater Seattle Partners recently and lent me these slides in our discussions. There are two underappreciated small business challenges, and I think some of this data is a little old, but back to my earlier point that everything that was kind of going wrong in the economy is going more wrong now. Fewer businesses were being created already in America. The share of all businesses that were less than a year old, you can see, fell by half. More than 2/3 of U.S. industries are concentrated into fewer and fewer hands and fewer companies. At the same time, and this is really key, it's not just that people are failing to create new businesses or it's too difficult to start a business. Those businesses that have ideas that could grow and employ most people, where we see the most job growth, there's a decline in those types of firms. So it's the potential of firms not just to start up, but then to succeed once they're started. There's something toxic about conditions today that is squelching businesses too early. Next slide, please. Bringing this back to the region, this is metrics from before COVID, I want to stress. So these very large numbers of people is prior to COVID. So people out of work, 298,000 in the greater Seattle area. If we wanted to improve that to be best amongst peer cities, other metropolitan areas like Minneapolis, we'd have to bring that down by a fifth. Low wage work, 560,000 folks. To be on par with other cities and other metropolitan areas, we need to bring that down about 3%. Underemployed, 4%. These are pre-COVID numbers, so we can assume when this gets updated, none of this is better, all of this is worse. And the last number is interesting there. It's the missing entrepreneurs. And that's if we saw firm or company formation in minority and women-owned businesses at the same level as the percentage of the population as a whole, how many other entrepreneurs would we see? And we're missing about 4,000 small business locally held companies. If you look at it within the sectors that we do the most exporting in, there should be a larger number. It should be like 12 or 14,000. Next slide, please. So something that's important for our businesses to know right now, and for those who are dealing with the ongoing challenges by the pandemic and looking at the new CARES Act dollars, is something that we're trying to work very hard in communicating out. City of Kent is at probably an all-time high for technical assistance and technical support to both Green River College, SBDC, Small Business Development Center, and Highline College, thanks to Human Services contract with Start Zone program. Historically, the Green River College, SBDC, has been more focused on those firms that are trying to scale up, not the little micro enterprise, but more of the 20, 50, several hundred person firm trying to add those jobs. Back to the theory that I had earlier, that that's where the real problem was. That's kind of how the accreditation of small business administrations go. Highline College has created a unique program more focused on the more vulnerable, smaller businesses called Start Zone, which is why the city, in response to this crisis, partly contracted with them as well. So we're now contracting with both. And if you encounter any small businesses that need help in Kent, please refer them to either both Kevin Grossman and Taryn Hornby at Green River, or Rich Shockley and his group at Highline College are both very skilled. They're expertly trained in what's coming directly from the federal government. They have access to unique insights and are standing by and ready to help our businesses. One thing I think looking forward into the year, and I think something that Michelle and I have talked a lot about, is to build on the work of our small grant program, build on the investment of the Human Services Department and relationships, and go back to the community, listen some more, find how we can make these resources in the Small Business Development Center more accessible and more broad, and take the moment that we have now of investing in increased capacity to also then think through how can we improve service delivery of small business technical services, and then also think through, it's going to be mostly listening, what else we can do to make it easier to start a business and maintain a business. So that's a project that I think is in its infancy. It was kind of born out November and December is when we've started having these conversations with some of our community organizations. Right now we are helping to push out a King County ADO that's technical term for the resource center that comes from the State Department of Commerce. They're doing their third round of survey. We participated in the first two. That's one way that we're going to get more local information, because as I think you saw in some of the earlier slides, it's often surprising to people that we have, as government, sometimes a lot of information, and then in other areas, almost no information at all. And the amount of businesses that have closed, for instance, is not something that we have. We're going to have to rely on survey information. Our friends and partners at World Relief who worked with us on outreach on the small business grant program, I know that they will be launching pretty soon here another round of survey. And we want to be additive to those survey efforts and not duplicative as a city. And we want to be looking at that and then taking that information and looking back at some of these issues. Next slide, please.
Bill, can you hang on one second?
Yeah.
Councilmember Thomas, your hand is up. Do you have a question? Oh, you're on mute.
I can wait till Bill's finished.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Go ahead, Bill. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. So next slide. So, some of the things that we were doing, I just wanted to give quick kudos to Kent Downtown Partnership, as well as our Public Works Department, Bill Thomas, Matt Gilbert, in Economic Community Development, Rob Knudsen in our my department, working with KDP to help accommodate safe outdoor eating, help keeping some of our restaurants open. We use some of our dollars to, with contract with KDP, to loan out for this equipment, and staff work to help build out and permit some of these parklets that, as you can see, people are now using. Next slide. And I also wanted to now, just very briefly, in our local update, share some information that's good. All the doom and gloom in the economy. Investment is still happening. Things will be changing. Things that we've looked at as long vacant in the city of Kent for some time are moving forward. SARS Super Saver Foods has leased the former GI Joes on Kent's East Hill. They're in for mechanical permits now. I don't have a date as to their opening. And then something else I have, probably, unfortunately, not as much detail as people might be really interested to hear. But Kaiser Permanente, the medical office group, has purchased the Kmart lot, which is an 8-acre property that we've stared at for some time at Washington Valley Highway. The city's been privy for some time that there has been some conversation between Kaiser Permanente and the ownership. We've been answering questions, explaining the value and benefit of Meet Me on Meeker, circulation, access, and bringing medical into the city is, I think, an affirmation that Kent is, within the subregion of the Kent Valley, sort of the emergent place of services, employment, really sort of a mini capital in the south end between Tacoma, Seattle, and Bellevue. And I think having a big medical facility at this location with Kent Station and Accesso Shower Center and the Justice Center really starts to solidify that. So I think it's a really keystone project for the whole Meet Me on Meeker enterprise. Certainly, as a company that's very interested in healthy lifestyles, something like Meet Me on Meeker, if it didn't exist, it'd be something they'd be wanting to build themselves or ask that it be built. And probably will have a pretty large requirement for multimodal trips. So bus rapid transit in the area, the sounder station, all these things will be of interest to them. I have very sketchy notion of what they'll actually do with this property, to be honest with you. It does not include the Goodwill or the lot to the parts of the property to the south, but it is now public record that Kaiser Permanente has purchased the Kmart, and we're looking forward for them to getting back in touch with us as they develop and refine their plans and may want to share more after purchasing that. So that's a very big deal. Next slide, please. So on the subject of redevelopment, I've been working as a liaison to Sound Transit staff on transit-oriented development on the West Hill. I want to remind everyone of our partnership agreement with Sound Transit, where we have the city's goals of supporting economic investment and capacity building around the station, and that we have a mixed-use neighborhood that we think through access to services, jobs, amenities, as well as housing at this station is something that we wanted in the agreement and is part of the agreement. And I think given all the issues and challenges I just described, I want to connect what we're doing there to this story of regional economic recovery and some of these larger problem statements, because our sort of putting forward into this development agreement that we invest in capacity building and economic investment is dead center of all the issues in economic development as a region. And I think that that's to our benefit. And this location, strategically, again, halfway between the major population centers, we ourselves, of course, a major population center, very close to Highline College and to the airport, has some strategic advantages for working on these projects, specifically the college, that a lot of other sites along the Light Link extension don't have. Next slide, please. So again, I'm borrowing heavily tonight from my colleagues, but this is from Greater Seattle, and they've been having a work group on creating a new regional framework for recovery. And one of the things that's very different about economic development as practiced at the regional level in the city of Seattle and Greater Seattle for the 5 or 6 years I've been up here, as compared to every other metro in the country, is that the focus has often been about business recruitment. Whereas actually most of the country in economic development has moved on to talking about projects and talking about business acceleration, workforce development projects. How do we get into the trenches of the issues that I described, put hands together, build partnerships, and deliver new programs aimed at solving some of those problems. And that's a core of they're an organization, Greater Seattle Partners right now, I would say, is in flux and transition. And they are looking for signature projects that have high impact. Talk about this here because of the fact that we do have these surplus properties in the city of Kent. So I think strategically we are an important place for their economic recovery in a way that is more just and equitable. We have the assets to work on those projects. Next slide, please. Again, sorry for this bit of wonkiness here, stolen from the city of Seattle, but I think it's actually important to think for a moment how some of our neighboring cities are viewing where we are now as to where we've been. And they have, this is again borrowing from the city of Seattle, but I think it's absolutely informing a regional discussion right now that I'm participating in. There's been this evolution in the economy, right? So if you go back before 1970, most jobs were middle wage. It was dominated by Boeing and manufacturing. The knowledge economy, which probably is more associated with Microsoft, started to see a hollowing out, a skills gap. So you see that camel's hump forming. And then you see in the COVID recession, the great drop in low wage work. So, everything going forward is to think about how do we restore those middle wage jobs. And as much as I'm talking about things of being new in the world of economic development, I have 4 bullets here on the left because I think also there's probably not that much new under the sun in economic development. There's 4 basic ways that we can get in there and intervene in the public sector to work on the landscape of jobs. We can work on talent development. We can work on research and commercialization, specific workforce programs for specific industries, specific research and commercialization efforts, and how we socialize those out of the university system to specific companies. We can do infrastructure and placemaking. We can create labs or testing equipment using real estate and specifically suiting that to particular industries in a way that visibly encapsulates our regional brand and personifies it, and then also spurs interaction of people at those places. And lastly, we can work on capital. We can work on access to loans. So if you are of the belief that the above trend evolution of the economy is what we've seen, we've probably inadequately tended to those 4 things. And in our subregion of the Kent Valley, I would just say that we are engaged in discussions on all of these. And one of the things that I think our office really wants to think about with the properties that we have is how are we being strategic in connecting to them. Next slide, please. So that brings me to the Naden Assemblage update. So the hotel development is, I think everyone now knows, is off. We terminated our tentative agreement on the southern 2 of the 7 acres. A panel met of council members and staff and selected Avenue 55, a developer who's done some boutique and interesting things in the realm of flex tech buildings. We're now exchanging language on a non-binding memorandum of understanding. The holidays kind of intervened, I would say, with our timetable on that. I'm next to hear the reaction to our proposal on Friday. And as a reminder, whatever memorandum of understanding comes from this discussion will then, of course, have to be approved by council. And this would only and put in place the developer, in this case, in a position to exclusively negotiate with us for a period of time. This is the outlining concept in return for them helping to entitle design, develop concepts for, and seek out end user interest on that property. We would have a lot of input in that. So it's basically putting the city in a place to be better able to realize partnerships in the property, to realize types of employment on that property that wouldn't otherwise happen. And so we're trying to get into a flexible place with that developer as an advisor to the city and as someone who can help realize that. That would, of course, then result in a proposal that would then also be taken to council for approval and passage. I mentioned, if you can go back a slide, actually, Kim, please. So I mentioned we've been talking with folks on all of these. Sadly, I would say, someone we've been working closely with from the University of Washington, Dr. Robert Wingley, who was affiliated with NASA, and someone who we had most recently worked with him to get a member of Green River College's, one of our deans, Tyann Chen, engaged on his board and recruit teachers from the Kent School District to expose children to STEM education and sort of the thrill of space. Someone who's been very passionate about that for years in the area, and someone Blue Origin always spoke highly of. And we were talking to about how we get his graduate students more engaged, sort of under that third bullet there, infrastructure and placemaking, maybe around satellite manufacturing facilities. Sadly, he suddenly tragically passed away on December 24th. So it was kind of a blow to that discussion. But there are a lot of other interested people. It was a sad thing in a very sad, terrible year. But I bring it up because it is the kind of discussion that the economic development staff is pursuing in parallel to these discussions on the surplus property. But parallel is probably the wrong word choice. The intention is to have them intersect at the appropriate time, and so that we are being strategic in the assets that we have on working on some of these issues. And with that, I'll stop for questions.
Okay, I've got Councilmember Thomas followed by Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hey, Bill, excellent presentation. Am I on?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, I compliment you because as you were going through the presentation, I, as a former retailer with the MBA and stuff, I thought of the things that you were talking about, the toxicity of that was holding us back. Yet later in your discussion, you did bring it up through the, I think it was the Seattle graphs that you're using.
Yeah.
Because as I look at it, yeah, that's okay. That's right. Plagiarism. I guess I look at things at the glass half full because as I see right now, so many opportunities that are available. First of all, we've got a lot of people, as you mentioned, that are, and some of our high paid jobs are now unemployed. And in the past, we've seen things like this happen. Boeing used to have all these downturns every once in a while. And out of that came engineers with some really great ideas. They didn't have the time or money maybe at that time to do anything about it. But now that they're furloughed or fired or whatever, they now have the time and take their ideas to the bank. And that's the other part, that money is available. And with money available and good ideas, I don't see how we can not do well in the coming years. And I really kind of excited, to tell you the truth, as this vaccinations become more and more available. I just see a whole bunch of small businesses spring right out of the ground. And I'm kind of excited about the next few months as we are going to be able to witness some of these things happening. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember. And yes, you're right. There's a lot of ideas, and there is still money out there. And I think one of the slides I was using was talking about, let's say that engineer had the great idea. They may start for a year, and then somewhere between years 3 and year 10, something goes very wrong. So, that's sort of the puzzle that I think there's been a very large decline in the success of those types of companies. And I think that's one of the things that people are talking about focusing on, but there needs to be interventions all along the spectrum. They just need to be the appropriate ones and understood the reasons why. There's a lot of people suffering at the lower wage and the types of vulnerabilities that certain type of businesses have also need to be worked on.
Councilmember Michaud.
May I add something, Madam Mayor?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Bill, the thing that I have seen that has hurt us, and I'm talking about on the big corporate level as well, is the amount of taxes that our state is raising all the time, and our regulations that we keep putting on businesses. And yeah, I guess I'm very pro-business, but I see Boeing going to Charleston. I see Tesla and others from California moving to Texas. Texas has got open arms welcoming all these businesses and corporations. And I wonder why we can't allow our state to do the same. Does that make sense?
I will say that we did, actually at my urging, reach out to Tesla some months ago and heard back from them directly. And it's a very simple answer. And we knew what the answer would be even as we reached out to them, which was we're nowhere near competitive as a state in terms of tax incentives for those types of
Exactly. Exactly.
I would say that the state, there's a difference of opinion as to strategy, and there's more than one way to address the issues of the economy right now. But we're not even in the game when it comes to sort of the big whale hunt. It's just we're not anywhere near the big game hunting.
It's actually worse than that. In one sense, it's worse because, like you just mentioned, it's almost becoming a liability to move to Washington because of our high taxes and high regulations, and as opposed to what Texas has done. I mean, I just think there's a beautiful example for us to follow, but unfortunately, leadership doesn't seem to want to go that way. So, thank you again.
Thank you,
Councilmember. Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Bill. You might have already talked about this. My computer cut out when you were talking about restaurants.
Oh.
I'm wondering if there is a way that we could get a list of restaurants that have outdoor dining. It's like a #1 question that I'm getting all the time. And then also you didn't plagiarize because you did credit your sources. So thank you.
Thank you. I was feeling a little sheepish about that, but yes, as far as the list, no, I don't keep that actually. And I'll share something with you. I'm meeting on Wednesday with IT and finance to discuss changes to our business license intake, because one of the things that's been very vexing, and I referenced sort of spotty data, we don't have just a ready-made, there's the list of restaurants that are licensed in Kent. For communication, we find all sorts of other ways to find this out. I mean, when we were promoting take-home dining with the I Love Kent blog, we worked to help find that information, but it's not like a fingertip type data. It's actually, we're going through property owners, we're going through our network, it's going through word of mouth and phone calls, and we spend time on it to create lists. I'm not in a regulatory police fashion, taking stock of who's got, outdoor dining and who doesn't. We're just been providing a program to KDP. If that's what the question is, maybe that's different. But in terms of where we are loaning the restaurant equipment, it's through KDP, and I can provide that list. But if you mean citywide, more globally, I don't have that kind of ready-made list. But back to the meeting on Wednesday, we are looking to include a few more questions, because I think it is very important that we collect and know a little bit more about our business community. There's some difficulties in that. We want to talk through that. We're not creating more barriers with the types of information that we collect. But as the business granting project earlier this year demonstrated, something that we knew going into it, 10 to 20% plus of businesses actually are probably don't have a local city license. So it's not an easy thing to track. There's a reason why Harvard and these other groups that I've been using, they actually go and buy private payroll information to track employment, because they don't have very accurate business count data. We've looked at in the past at purchasing data from Hoover's and other companies that do it, and then we compare them to PSRCs, and it's always a rough approximation. But maybe I'm not answering your question properly. Were you asking, a list of outdoor businesses that have been loaned equipment in the downtown area through the KDP program, or were you just asking more globally who's been doing outdoor dining?
I was just wondering if more globally.
Oh, okay. Then I I don't have that. I do have in the downtown area. More globally, we'd have to go work the grapevine and find that out.
Okay, I have lots of hands raised here. Councilmember Boyce, you're next in line.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Hey, Bill, great presentation. I think, I, as a council member, always look forward when you talk about from economic development, where we at and where we going. After this presentation, I hope me and my fellow council member feel pretty good about, just what's going on in economic development and what you guys trying to do, looking forward, and taking advantage of this downtown and make sure when we bounce back up, we're ready to go. And the number two is never recreate the wheel. Okay, it's okay to do that. Anybody recreate the wheel is probably not a smart person. So hey, you're a smart person. So thank you very much. I do have a question. When you talk about the financial support from Green River and Highline, right, and how we're going to support that, and one was around new business versus maintaining business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking from where we at today, from an economic perspective, we'll be focusing more on trying to maintain the business, right? Those out there. So how do you balance the two for us? And I know it's a tough app. I'm just curious how we go about balancing that.
It's a great question. I think one of the things that I like saying that, City of Kent's very we're rich in colleges, right? Tongue in cheek, because Highline's not technically in Kent, especially now that they're moving out of the president's office, and that's being leased. So that was always my claim we have the SBDC also within the jurisdictional boundaries of City of Kent. But the reason I say that and answer your question is that I think each SBDC and their staff have perhaps better strengths and talents, and I think what we don't have is the level of coordination that I would like to see. I think informally everybody works really well, but it's not like a startup or restart up 405 or some of the other subregions of the Puget Sound, where you have no wrong door, quick one web portal that gets you to all the different resources. And that's what I mean a little bit when I was saying about accessibility. I feel like historically Highline's strengths have been on helping the most vulnerable small business and trying to keep them going, although they have been participants, of course, into the Food Innovation Network and startup advice there, and specifically in the food realm. Green River College has been more on the, and there's been a few different business advisors over the years, but more stable in the last couple of years and doing a great job there, Kevin Grossman. I love to have them come and present the committee of the whole sometime. But I think one of the things that we need to be more intentional about, and I want to do this in dialogue with the business community, Councilmember Boyce, and not prejudge the answer to your question too much without talking to them more. But my initial take would be that we have a lot of different people here. It's more about sorting them, presenting them, getting their services more targeted, and everybody kind of understanding, oh, this is their strength. This is the stable of people who work with that type of business. And here's the stable of people who work with that kind of business. And we're not so scattershot as we are now. Right now, if I get a call from someone on Pack Highway, maybe someone in the personal services business, like a nail salon or hair salon, I go, okay, Rich, Kevin, who wants it? And that's just not the way to do it. And I've talked about that a bit with a lot of the players there, and I think they agree, but they've been so swamped. I mean, this year has been one for the record books in the small business advisory world. So in terms of just getting through the PP, and that continues with the new CARES Act stimulus bill. So it hasn't been a time to really overhaul that, but I'm anticipating that. That's something I want to focus on, and specifically considering the contracts that we hold at an all-time high, $85,000 out there to both of them, 35 to Green River and over 55 to Highline. It's the right time to do that. So that's kind of an answer, non-answer. Councilmember Boyce.
That's good. I don't say, hey, great presentation. I enjoyed it, right? I can listen to you all night, right? I'm really excited about where we're going as a city. And my last question, just a statement, really. I'm really excited about, based on what we did on Meet Bill Meeker, that have Kaiser coming in now. That's really going to shape on that whole area up. So kudos to the team, and pretty excited about that as we move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, it is pretty exciting. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bill, thank you. Great presentation. One thing that's just kind of rattling around as I think through, sort of that that hump. And then also your reference to, I think you said it was 3 to 10 years is when we kind of see something going on with this.
Out there, but yeah, there's a 1 year business and then there's a kind of a fall off, right?
Yeah. I wonder how much of that is related to healthcare costs, because I know that's kind of the period of time where they might be growing and taking on employees.
Mm-hmm.
And, perhaps, the cost of really being able to be competitive and recruit, with some kind of good package, if that might be difficult. And I just know I hear from my friends with, businesses how, it seems like 15, 20% every year on those costs.
There's some thresholds at which a lot of factors start, as you scale up, you face a lot of different challenges. It's one thing to have your proof of concept take hold and that
right.
you make a profit for a period of time, then to keep up with it. There's the valley of death is what they talk about. And, there's a lot. That's just a very large subject to unpack. And then we also have to be realistic in municipal government. What are our levers that are most direct? And one of the things that I've noticed, and this goes back to Rally the Valley, is that certain types of, there's a lot of pressure. So certain things are getting displaced. Certain types of businesses are getting displaced. We talked about Boeing perhaps going elsewhere, but we've had some pretty large companies in Kent, move to Kansas, move to Arizona, and they took certain chunks out of the wage profile, right, with them. And that's something I've always been thinking about and I continue to think about as we do this. So workforce development is one thing, and real estate is another. Those are, I think, closer to the fire of the tools ready at hand. Not to say that there aren't many other issues. And I think that's where bringing in these outside experts, or, we had a great relationship with Craft 3 through the business granting program. They're a community development financial institution who runs loan programs, and finding more resources and more ways to get CDFIs connected with the industry organizations that we've been cultivating relationships with over the last couple of years is another strategy to maybe think about that valley of death and how do we get capital into that. So there's special groups that work on different aspects of that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, though. Great work tonight.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Core, I saw your hand up and it's down. Did you have a question?
It's already been answered. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Bill, for that presentation. A lot of information to unpack. There's so much going on in the world of economic development as we're trying to figure out what our recovery from COVID looks like, the timelines, all of those things. I am very grateful for the amount of support that both you and Michelle have been providing to our business community through this very unprecedented time. Thank you for that. And thank you for sharing some good news about some properties we have around town. I know that that's been one of the questions I am asked more often, when we used to be out in the community having conversations with folks about what's going into that property. So it'll be nice to be able to tell people now. And
I know we've been buttoned up about it a little bit and tight to see what would happen, but there's been a lot of action behind the scenes, and now we'll be able to talk more about it, and excited to see what happens. So thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are going to move on the agenda to reports from council and staff. This is an opportunity for all of us to share with the community the work that's being done outside of council meetings, and where we are representing Kent at that regional table. I will start quickly, just a couple of highlights. Yesterday, we had a great meeting with four of our legislators from the 11th, 33rd, and 47th districts about our Downey Farmstead project and the need for funding to complete that. So that's that fish passage that's happening down there on Freger Road, will improve habitat for our salmon, improve recreation opportunities, as well as flood storage. And given the weather we've been having, that flood storage piece is pretty important. So we had some great questions from our legislators, and I believe we have good, solid support for funding to complete that project from them. I am the vice chair of the Transportation Policy Board, and we have been having some pre-meetings over the last several weeks about getting ready to kick off the project selection criteria task force. So the city of Kent has been, we've received numerous awards for that federal funding on transportation projects through PSRC, and we're going to be looking at what the criteria as a region that we're going to be setting for those awards in the next cycle. So I will report out on that more as that subcommittee gets going. We've had several, since we met last, several very successful mass distribution events, including our now world famous chicken nugget masks. I can't tell you how much our community loves those masks. We had a great distribution event right after Christmas. And if you follow us on social media, you'll know that we've got a couple new designs coming in the future. It's been fabulous to watch our community embrace our city and proudly represent everywhere they go. Finally, both CAO Matheson and myself are participating in biweekly calls with Patty Hayes from the King County Seattle Public Health. We had a call today on vaccinations, and I'm sure you're all aware in the news we've got some bottlenecks in the distribution of those vaccinations, waiting still for further definition on who's going to be included in categories 1B, 1B1, 1B2. So the categories are now growing. We still don't have a lot of definition. Those are decisions that are being made by King County Public Health in the state of Washington, but we will keep you posted as we learn things there. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Derek Matheson.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. I've got a short list of updates for you. I thought I'd start with the 2021 City Council retreat. Things are different this year because of COVID-19. Typically, the retreat is a 2-day gathering on a Friday and Saturday in February. We've been talking about alternatives, and it looks like we're centering on the notion of doing one day in February online on either that first Friday or Saturday in February, and then doing another day in the springtime in person once we're able to do that. Our retreat facilitator has interviewed all of the council members, and we'll be building the agenda in the coming weeks, and we'll keep you informed of that. Secondly, the mayor mentioned a briefing for legislators, and that's a good segue to the fact that the Washington State Legislature convenes on Monday, January 11th for a 105-day session that includes budgets for operating budget, capital budget, and transportation budget. The mayor, our lobbyist, and I have met with all of our Kent area legislators and shared our legislative agenda. And our lobbyists will be providing the council with weekly written reports on our progress toward accomplishment of our legislative agenda. So stay tuned for those. Next, I wanted to note that we're now advertising all of our board and commission openings on social media. So that's something that council members can repost, forward, and use to let our communities know about opportunities to advise the city and work more closely with city officials on important issues. Next, I wanted to mention House Bill 1590. This is the 0.1% sales tax credit that the City Council imposed a few months ago for affordable housing and related services. You'll recall 60% of those funds have to be used to build affordable housing, and 40% can be used for related services. So we're working with a couple of different options for the housing construction piece, one being the South King Housing and Homelessness Partners Organization. And another option would be to collaborate with King County if that's something they want to do as part of the regional system. If we go the skip route, we would be working with our neighboring cities who also impose the tax to evaluate their interest, as well as we'd need to build SKIP's organizational capacity to do that. On the services side, of course, we're pursuing a police mental health co-responder option in partnership with the county and other South King County cities. We're also looking at our human services grant function, whether it's adding funds to the existing program or creating a parallel program like it for getting it out to agencies that can serve our population. And then, of course, we have the $200,000 in one-time funds for youth behavioral health. And so as we work on this, we'll keep you informed, and all of the decisions about how those funds will be used will come back to the City Council. I also wanted to mention that Uriel Varela, our interim race and equity manager, started on January 1st. He and I are talking about a work plan and timeline for the equity strategic plan and policy that the council included in the 21-22 budget, as well as a work plan and timeline for our other equity initiatives. And we look forward to bringing that to the council at a meeting in the near future to talk about how the council and community can be involved in that work. I guess close to last, just wanted to mention our communications team is updating council bios for the website and other places. And so if you have not gotten back to our team to take advantage of that opportunity, we encourage you to do that. And then the rest of my written report is in your packet this evening, and there is no executive session. So with that, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Derek. Councilmember Thomas, do you have a question?
I do for Derek. Thank you very much, Your Honor. Derek, is this the year that they also start redistricting process?
Yes, with the 2020 census data in hand, the State Redistricting Commission will look at the boundaries. I can't recall if those new boundaries will be in place for the 22 election or we have to wait till the 24 election. But with the census data in hand, that process will start.
I believe it's the 22, but I'll talk to you about this another time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I will turn it over to Council President Troutner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We had a workshop earlier this evening, and workshop started off with a report from Chad Buren. He is our interim Public Works Director, and he gave us an update on the rain that we had this past weekend. There were some road closures and some flooding, and they are closely watching the weather, especially this evening, and crews are ready in anticipation of more rain. So crews are ready for that. Some of you have asked about the James Street closure, and there is the pump station on James Street that was put in place to help reduce flooding, but not necessarily, it doesn't have the ability to completely eliminate flooding when we have heavy rains like we had last weekend. In the past, it would have been far worse and closed much longer, but with that pump station working so hard, the road was not closed quite as long. Also, when the Mill Creek Dam completion is done, that will help with some of that at the bottom of the hill as well. So again, crews are paying attention, and hopefully it will be a little bit drier this evening. We had a presentation from the Transportation Master Plan Concurrency, Transportation Impact Fees. Concurrency is basically how you build things as a community grows, and the transportation impact fees are a method of paying for that infrastructure needed to accommodate that growth. And that's a one-time charge paid by developers. It must be used within 10 years and on public streets and roads. So the Public Works Department is currently crafting the transportation impact fee concurrency programs, and they will bring that back to council through multiple workshops during the first quarter. Some of the things they'll be looking at is updating the land use categories, considering expanding downtown discount zone to Midway, and then also funding multimodal projects. One of the questions that was asked is how can the transportation impact fees fund transportation master plan projects? And as you know, we've been talking a lot about that this past year. And there are currently 96 projects on that list. And of those projects, 50 are actually eligible for funds from the transportation impact fees. So that's something else that they'll be looking at. And again, we'll be seeing more about that at upcoming workshops. And then the last presentation was on the Human Services Grant Award process. And this was something that we had talked about during the budget process. We wanted to see how these funds are distributed and who qualifies for those and other information. Those funds are distributed approximately every 2 years, and we just finished distribution of those funds. So the next cycle will come up in 2022. And those funds go to groups in our community that provide services to various people. And part of what that process is how they determine the way that that money is distributed. And the staff and commissioners, the Human Service Commission actually participated in training this last year that included foundational equity work. They looked at training on equity, inclusion, implicit biasing, guiding framework for decision making. And what came from that is a revised score sheet on how they determine where that money goes, and also some tools that they were able to use in how they look at applications and applicants. So out of the 106 applications that were submitted, 8 were denied because they were incomplete, and 54 groups in our community received funding from the Human Services grant process. And included in that are 12 new programs that have not received funding before. So that's pretty good when you think of 54 groups that received funding, 12 of those are actually new programs. Those groups do have to report back to the Human Service Commission on how that money is spent, and there's certain criteria. So they will be doing that in the next 2 years. And then something else that came out of that is doing a survey, which will include groups that receive funding, organizations that did not receive funding, or those that did not apply, so that they can help better improve that process in the future. And as far as regional committees, I sit on the Regional Transit Committee. We will meet on January 20th. And the Regional Law, Safety, and Justice Committee, we will convene again on January 28th. So now I will turn to my colleagues and see if they have anything to report this evening, starting with Councilmember Michaud.
Thank you, Council President. I serve on the Regional Water Quality Committee, and we had another update on asset management. So King County now has a website, so everyone can go to this website and look at all the wastewater treatment assets, and you can find out fun stuff like which city still has wood sewer pipes. Thankfully, it is not Kent. And then we also got a briefing and a discussion about the King County Clean Water Plan and how the Regional Water Quality Committee can better participate in that process and not just approve the plan after it's already been created. And that is all I have to report.
Thank you, Councilmember Michaud. Councilmember Kaur.
Thank you. I serve on 3 regional committees, and we did not meet within the past month. We'll be meeting in the next 2 weeks, so I'll have an update then. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Larmer.
Thank you, Council President. So I serve on the King County Aging and Disabilities Advisory Council, and we did have our last meeting of the year, December 11th. I know it's going back a little bit, a few weeks here, but we had a presentation by a program that I want to share with our community because I think it's a really important program, especially, for our community and coming out of COVID. So it's called GREAT, and that stands for Geriatric Regional Assessment Team. And this is a program that had existed in King County previously. It lost funding, but because of the Human Services Seniors and Veterans Levy of last year, they are funded again. And what this program focuses on is they do assessments and casework for isolated adults 55 and over. And so what they're looking for to help provide assessments, it can be, mental health, physical, cognitive assessments. And these are adults that are living in their homes, usually alone. They're at possible, risk for needing to go to, a hospital visit. There's something unhealthy happening in their home environment. They're starting to have some mental decline and are going to need support and services. And so some of the samples they gave is, this can be your neighbor, something you've just noticed is a little off with your neighbor. Maybe it's the woman who comes to church one week. She's a little, disabled and seems maybe a little more confused than usual. You do not have to be a family member to report them. And what the clinicians will do is they will come out and, they'll make contact with that senior and they'll see what services might be needed, what intervention methods they can offer. And it's all, a lot of it is just kind of building that relationship and gaining the trust and finding out what's needed. So I think especially, as we come out of, hopefully this spring, as we come out of isolation, if there are, friends, neighbors, community members that you have some concerns about their conditions, and you can contact GRATE, which is GRAT, at soundgenerations.org. The phone number is also 206-448-5730. And again, the clinicians will take the case. They'll make contact and just see what support services might be available for that individual. So I just wanted to share that. And then I serve on the Affordable Housing Committee, and we'll be meeting next week.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Larmer, for sharing that information. Councilmember Boyce.
Thank you, Madam President. I serve on as a vice chair of the PIC SCA, and our next meeting is coming a week from tomorrow. I do want to add, Council President, you talked about human service and the number of people that was able to serve. I think it's more important to talk about the dollar amounts too, right? So I think it was close to 3 million. If you count everything up, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was a significant dollar amount that we as a city put out into the community to try to help those that's needed as well too.
Thank you, Councilmember Boyce. That is a good point. I think I wrote allocating over $1 million, plus there's additional COVID money that I think will be given out. And then of course, Council in our budget or in the budget process allocated some money as well. So you're right. It's a lot of funds that get to go out and help those groups in our community. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next up, Councilmember Thomas, do you have anything to share?
You're on mute, Councilmember Thomas.
Computers. Okay. Thank you, Council President. And I don't have much to share about last month. However, we do have a meeting tomorrow night, 5:30, Station 78 out in Covington. Thank you. That's all I have.
Sorry, Councilmember Thomas, but we are not meeting tomorrow. We will meet the third Wednesday of the month. But
well, thank you. I had that written down wrong.
So you have tomorrow night off. Thank you so much. Councilmember Fincher, do you have anything to share?
Yes, I do, Madam President. I have the Mental Illness and Drug Dependency Advisory Committee, and we will not meet until the fourth Thursday of this month. King Conservation District, which I chair, we are in the midst of reviewing grant applications for our food program, the food program that helps get more food, more neutrally dense food into industry, such as hospitals and all, but also into whether it's a community garden or cow processing machine. And there's a multitude of ways that we help with that, among urban forests and other things. We also have the Arts Commission that I serve on. And with Arts Commission, we often hear, with the city period, we often hear the multi-millions of dollars that are spent. We often don't talk about the small number of dollars that can also have a huge impact. And an example of that is the Arts Commission does grants. They had $7,560 in grants that served 55 different, or helped support 55 different programs in the city this past year. And those 55 events, rather instead of programs, served 18,700 people. So that's a pretty good return on the dollar. So I just wanted to be sure that was brought to light. And thank you very much. That's it for my reports this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember Fincher. Madam Mayor, that ends our reports.
All right. Thank you, Council President. Thank you, council members, for those reports this evening. With that, we are going to move on in the agenda. Item number 6 is public hearing. We do not have one this evening. Item number 7 is public comment. This is the opportunity that the community has to, in our COVID world, call in and join the Zoom call and provide council with input on any concerns they have or things that they would like the council to address. Kim, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
There are no people signed up.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to the consent calendar, item number 8. The consent calendar is a compilation of work items that the council has taken up and discussed during the committee of the whole in the past few weeks. Council President, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve consent calendar items A through K.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. We have no other business tonight, but we do have a bid on the Riverbend Driving Range Phase 3. And joining us this evening is Nate Harper.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. So good to see your guys' faces tonight. This is great. So I am Nate Harper. I'm the Facilities Capital Project Manager, and I'm pleased to bring you tonight the results of our bid opening for the Phase 3 Riverbend Driving Range addition and remodel project, as well as a recommendation for moving forward. As a brief overview, this project will consist of adding 14 new stalls to the existing range, as well as new restrooms, a new point of sale area, a new entry from the parking lot, as well as many other needed upgrades to the range building itself. We're excited to get the driving range project started. So we've put together an aggressive but achievable schedule that I'd like to share with you so we can get the building back open as soon as we can. With the approval tonight, we'd be starting off as soon as tomorrow morning and hoping to get a contract in place by on or around the 27th. At that time, that would kick off the closure of the driving range as soon as we were to award. We have a 90-day working period, working days for the completion of the project, which would put us around May 18th or so for the completion. And we have a grand reopening planned. I talked to Pete Peterson, Golf Management, and their crew is thinking around the end of May, the last week in May. So with that being said, we had our bid opening for the project back on December 11th, and we had 6 very competitive bids, with the lowest responsible bidder being Christensen Incorporated General Contractors out of Tumwater, with a base bid amount of $1,525,000, which is below the architect's estimate of $1.8 million. We fully vetted Christensen Incorporated and feel comfortable with recommending that we move forward with their bid. And with that, I'm willing to answer any questions if anybody might have.
Okay, thank you, Nate. It will sure be exciting to see that driving range reopen. It's one of the most popular attractions down there at Riverbend for sure. Council, do you have any questions? All right, I am seeing no hands raised. So with that, is there a motion to approve the Riverbend Driving Range Phase 3 contract?
Madam Mayor, I move to award the Riverbend Driving Range Phase 3 addition and remodel project bid to Christensen Inc., general contractor, in the amount of $1,700,600, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the city attorney and parks director.
Second.
All right, there is a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. And thanks again, Nate, for that presentation.
Welcome. Thank you.
We do not have an executive session this evening, so that brings us to the end of our agenda. I want to wish everyone a happy new year. We're kicking off 2021. It is definitely going to be a brighter year. We just have to all hang in there for a while longer while we sort out vaccinations and get COVID under control. Do want to just remind everyone to take a few minutes in your day, reach out to somebody that you haven't talked to for a while, or as Councilmember Larmer was talking about, maybe that elderly neighbor. Just check on people. We need to take care of each other so we can find our way through this. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.
I'm an elderly neighbor.
fire in both school districts. And so parks is really the only impact fee that we don't have currently. And, I think growth impacts parks just like it impacts all these other things too. So next slide.